Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm Bobby. With me today, we've got Jamison, we've got Ty, and folks, we are back after a 1 week absence to just do our we're doing an off-season show, but we've tried to we're trying to put some stuff together here, a loose outline, which is a bit foreign to our podcast typically. So we're going to start with a little bit of news, then dive into the big news around college football today with Boatin Blake. He's coming on a little later to talk about the college football playoff. Guys, how have y'all been? Everyone doing good?
Yeah, thank God they gave us some content for today.
Yeah, I much appreciate it. It's been a boneyard out there. Nothing good, just dry, horrible stuff. But the college football playoff gave us a little bit, and Jamison, OU gave us a little bit recently. In the news that J.R. Sandlin out, going to SMU to take on like a general manager, assistant. I think it's like an assistant AD position.
AD, which
is
an upgrade in the title, so hence the move.
Yeah, which is good. I mean,
good for him. I unfollowed him, so I don't have to see his freaking life advice every single morning anymore. So no offense to J.R. Sandlin. I'm sure he's a very good guy. I don't know how much he actually did. We talked about Annie Hansen all the freaking time, aside from all of the hoopla that went down with Lincoln Riley, but just what she was. Did y'all even see anything on message boards about, J.R. Sandlin did a really good job of setting this up? It seems like from what I've read about this new hire is Brent Venables puts all of the recruiting setup, not as much in the recruiting coordinator and more so on the coaches themselves.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously it can always be run differently. We don't know how it is behind the scenes, but it is, it does seem a bit of a figurehead-esque position when you get into something like that, when it's not someone who's actually the coach. So,
yeah, for sure. It's someone, just handling things in the back room sort of thing. It's not massively important. I don't think anyone's going to decommit because Sandlin left.
No, I think I can confidently say that out loud right now.
Right, for sure. So Sandlin's out.
Open up the transfer portal.
Oh God, Sandlin's gone. I'm leaving. Where am I going to get my Bible verses? Yeah, no. Anyways, so Curtis Lofton looking to be in, right? Am I right on that, or is that there's two big moves, because there's Jolie Ale. I'm probably slaughtering that name pronunciation. I think she is replacing a different director who left earlier, but I could be wrong. And then but Curtis Lofton also rumored to be coming in as the general manager, and the GM title. That's a bit foreign to college football, but let's be honest, that's kind of what you have to be nowadays.
Yeah, just buckle up. I think people are throwing around that term, and you're going to see it so much right now in college football because of this whole Big Ten and SEC little get together, and then the eventual downfall of NCAA. Over under, let me ask both of y'all, just from what we can see right now with the climate of NCAA, 2 years until it falls apart.
Ooh. I don't have to ask Blake that. I'm curious to hear what he has to say about that.
I see him
I see him in the tiny off stage. Bring him
corner. Bring him in.
All right. Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. This OU thing is kind of it's gone on to different things.
Andy's out.
We got to give him proper. All right, he's sailing on in to talk about the demise of the NCAA and the college football playoff expansion, just because it got mentioned. Blake, over under how long the NCAA survives?
2 years. Is 2 years a good line? Is that a good line?
I think it's a little bit more, because the only reason why is I think the landscape's going to significantly change. I think in the next 2-3 years we're going to see Florida State bounce from the ACC, which is just going to cause that's going to cause the final, I think, windfall. Everybody's going to be jumping, whether it's ACC trying to absorb all the good Big 12 teams to keep that conference alive, or vice versa, or the Big 10 coming in trying to scoop a few. I think that is going to be like the first shot, and then we'll start to see the NCAA demise. Like, I think the conferences need to be positioned so that it's probably going to be a Big Two, and then you have to, like, that's what they have to work out, because you can't leave out the Big 12, because if you want to go separate and get away from the NCAA, you kind of have to resolve probably the basketball thing. I don't know, because like if you're going to take the profitable sports with you, you're going to take basketball too, but you can't take basketball without March Madness and including the smaller schools like the Big 12 schools. So I think there's a lot of logistics to work out, but I think like in the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be another groundbreaking change. Like the ACC is like the ACC is on life support or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It'll be next offseason. I'm confident about saying that it's going to be next offseason where the ACC is going to break apart. I think it's going to move quick.
The problem is they're relying on the courts to get this done, and like they are going to slow play this like no other. Like I just feel like it's gonna drag out because they do need some sort of ruling, because right now like they don't. The only thing that's being quoted is they have to pay their full grant of rights till like 2037, which is like a ridiculous amount. They're not gonna pay that much, but like they need some form of like ruling and or settlement, or get to the point where they feel like they can settle in order to get Florida State out of there. But the ACC, I think, is smart. They realize that if Florida State leaves, it's all gonna fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, the ACC's grant of rights is like honestly the only thing saving that conference right now. If it wasn't that ironclad, if it wasn't that long and punitive, there's no way in hell that Florida State or North Carolina would still be in the conference. They would be trying to jump to better seas there. Ty, what do you think?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I may have misheard you. I thought you said the NCAA. Or I don't know if we got off on a tangent about the ACC or you.
Yeah, no, but I think the ACC is the only thing holding it together, really. Like, because like once it's just down to Big Ten SEC, it's just going to become
that's a very college football centric. I don't think the NCAA is ever going away. I think college football spins off maybe, but who's going to regulate all the other sports?
Yeah.
Okay, that counts. That counts in part of my thing. Say, well, in college football, NCAA-F, when will that deteriorate? 2 years. I think 2 years, obviously. I think the over is the safe bet, obviously. But this is why we're having the conversation.
It's a bit of a, I don't know. I mean, on the ACC thing, right, it seems to me, obviously, I'm not the legal expert, but I can say I've never once been sued by the ACC, so I could perhaps be seen as an expert in this field. But it does seem a bit of like a house of cards situation, right? Like the ACC is just made up of the member institutions. If everyone just leaves and it falls apart, then there's nothing there to sue you. So I don't know. It seems like you could just leave and you'd be fine, right? You're going to sue yourself for damages?
Well, but that's the thing there are a couple institutions that would stick behind and then act as the ACC, much like how the 2-pack, of Washington State and Oregon State.
Yeah, look how successful they
were.
If I'm Florida State, I'm looking at that and going, okay, yeah, never mind, let's head out.
I mean, they're still kind of punishing. Blake, what do you think?
Yeah, because they can't. The problem is they can't, even if they all wanted to just kind of go their own way. The whole reason behind a grant of rights is you've bundled all your media rights and give them to a different entity that is then paying you for them. So, they could move on. Like, Florida State could could technically move on eventually, but, they need to get their media rights back so that they can get that money in order to, sell that side of things. It's that's the kicker.
Okay, so that
you can
seems
go
a bit...
The thing keeping them together is not the conference itself. It's the fact that you've sold them your rights.
So they sold their rights, right? But as our resident Swiftie, why can't Florida State just be like Florida State Taylor's version and then just go say that they're playing their own version of football? Let the
this
ACC,
is a Nathan
whatever,
for you
can
skit,
keep the old rights.
The plan.
It's like your version, right? It's like copyright, just its original performance. It's just Florida State's interpretation of Florida State football being played outside of. They can still have their rights.
It would be hilarious if like they had to resort to like the Toy Story game like simulation. It's like they're not allowed to show the actual live action version, so they have to show like the Toy Story. That's the only way you can watch a Florida State game because like they can find some loophole to like
AI.
Hey, Florida State just hired my guy Michael Whitman. He'll figure out a way to get it together.
Hey, if that was the case, I think degenerate gamblers would get even worse. Like, baby, I'm sorry, I can't do anything. I'm watching the Tuesday night Florida State AI game tonight. It's the best time slot.
I have to watch not Florida State. They've officially changed their name.
Maybe that's the future, right? Think about other like digital roulette. It didn't necessarily kill regular roulette, but you know, people play digital roulette. I don't know where I was going with that analogy, but
I think I see where you're going, but I don't think it makes any sense.
The NBA decided instead of fixing League Pass being like one of the worst products, like trying to access it from an app, they instead put out like a VR, like you can make it like your favorite movie, like combining AI and VR.
I saw that.
That's what it is. Like, what are we doing here? Like,
why?
I can't even get a Thunder game while I'm in Oklahoma City on my phone, and outside of the city, I can't access the app because it's so sucky, crashes all the time, so lagged. They can't even they can't figure that out. But of course, they want to roll out the airless basketball, the LED court, the AI VR experience, so you can make it look like Spider-Man, like Into the Spider-Verse. Like, it's so dumb.
Which they gave no money to Into the Spider-Verse for, by the way, or they also did not ask permission. So
they did okay. They didn't steal that. Like that animation style is not something like you can't own that animation style. It's animated like a comic,
right? But when you say make it look like the Spider-Man movie, you know, it's kind of straight up, you know. Regardless. Anyway, we have gone down several different rabbit holes here. But let's just dive right into the main college football playoff conversation, because we've talked about the NCAA falling apart. We can talk, and I'm sure we'll get to that later within this conversation. It'll definitely come back up again. But today, the college football playoff, or I believe it was today, it might have been yesterday, college football playoff, they're having meetings right now in Grapevine, Texas, at the Gaylord Texan, which is still a hilarious central point if you're familiar with the region. But they decided they're set on it. It's 5 auto bids for the 5 highest conference champions. They booted out Oregon State and Washington State. They don't get that bid anymore. Pac-12 does not exist. So we finally know what the postseason will fully look like next year. 12 teams, first round sites on campus. And so essentially the Power 4 get buys, and then you throw in Liberty at the end. What do we think about it? Obviously, this was the no-brainer decision, but what are our thoughts on how it all shook out?
Well, it's still ongoing. So like today they actually discussed, it looks like, the potential for expanding to 14, and there was no resolution on that.
Right. This
is for 2026.
I was just saying it's set for this year.
2 years. Okay. Yeah, it's set for till 2026.
Which is so college football that they're like, all right, we finally figured out a system. It's set. But in 2 years, let's think about changing it. You know, immediately after coming to a consensus, they're like, all right, how can we fix this? How can we change things more?
2 years is a long time in sports.
It took OU like 2-3 years to get out of the SEC. So I feel that, or get out of the Big 12 and into the SEC.
Whoa, foreshadowing.
no.
2 years. Breaking news.
Oh God. So yeah, I mean, Jamison, what do you think?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that it took them this long to finally figure out the things for next season. I just was stunned when I read that. I was like, are you kidding me? It took this long, whatever. And I had the same exact thoughts as y'all. I was like, chill. Y'all got to chill. Like, where are these committee people's minds at? Like, we're at the point where we're just now figuring out the logistics for next season's playoffs, and they're already talking about, long-term things. I'm hoping that's just a leak. I'm hoping that's just like that they talked about it. Like some person brought it up. and it's not actually legitimate. But what it sounds like, it was kind of like will be a point of discussion. Just
it does sound
leaves a nasty taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Well, like, you got it.
Yeah, it's the 12th team. I'm gonna be honest, like, I might be having a little bit of buyer's remorse. Like, I think I was all in for the 12th team, and I was a proponent of, like, it'll make some games interesting late in the year, where it's like typically teams that maybe have like 2 losses can battle it out, need some good performances, and like that's a positive. But I went back and I was just like looking at the teams who would probably make a playoff like that, and it's just like me thinking about OU last year. I know it wouldn't work out this way because of Liberty, but like OU being the first out of the playoff last year, and we knew for sure OU was not a playoff team. They were nothing close to a playoff team. We knew that about Penn State. We saw them get embarrassed. It just like, it kind of leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth thinking, oh, now I have to root for, or not like root for, but like, some of these teams I know aren't good, and I know will not win a national championship. I'm just afraid the product on the field will just turn out to like, we get now 2 rounds of like old semifinal games when they were like both blowouts when we got to the national championship, and we're just kind of like stuck with this like not interesting format because of how like March Madness works, because it's teams of 5, and there's a lot of variability in basketball. There's not a lot of variability in football. That's why you see Alabama never lose. That's why you see Georgia never lose. Like, sure, upsets will happen, but I'm just like a little worried that it just kind of draws it out a little too much.
Well, if you say that they're just going to go ahead and win anyways, that good teams are going to win, like, won't that make the upsets whenever they do happen mean even more and make it even more exciting?
Yes.
Well, also, yeah, Blake, you are literally an alumni of the one team that proves that you have to play it on the field. TCU made a national. You know what I mean?
It's the hardest. It's the hardest thing. And it's like, I think in my mind now going back, it's like more 6. So you can get just like those few stragglers. You don't really have the drama or whatever. But like the upsets, when you're saying these upsets, it's like March Madness. The reason why it's cool is because upsets can go on runs. I don't think we're going to see like really runs here, especially when it's
Liberty's not going to make a run. They're not going to upset Georgia
and I think and the fact that it's a home playoff game instead of a neutral site, like weird, you get sent up to Detroit, Michigan, and you have to like go play that week. It's just like, it's gonna be a lot of prep still for like a single game where I don't know. I don't feel like it's gonna be as magical. I
don't think there's any way in absolute hell that Michigan would turn down a home game at the Big House in the college football playoff to move.
But it's just like
field.
I know,
but like, that's
what I'm saying is like, upsets are gonna happen less if that's the case. Like in the first round, if they're playing home playoff games, then
I'm just saying, if Appalachian State goes to the Big House, the Appalachian State would never win in the Big House, right? That would never happen.
Yeah, but that was happening at the first
playoff.
It's not a playoff game. Like at that point, you have seen these teams play so many times. It's not like Appalachian State beat them and they went 11-1 that season and were like competing for a national championship. It's like the Michigan team ended up being kind of fool's gold. These teams are not going to really be fool's gold by the end of the year. We kind of know the.
I have to say,
go ahead.
This is just beautiful. Blake is now repeating the talking points that I was levying at him when he was arguing for a 12-team playoff. And it's wonderful because he is, in fact, a ball knower like myself. But I think Blake is missing one point. Like, there's one key thing that I disagree with him on here, and that's with the modern landscape of bowl games just not being that entertaining anymore. I feel like a bigger playoff. I agree with Blake. And I've said this about the 4-team playoff. It has never once created like a Cinderella story national champion. Like every single time that we've had the playoff, the team who everyone kind of expected to win ended up winning.
That is kind of a lie. The first
I'm sorry, when Georgia upset Alabama.
No, the first playoff, the third-string quarterback from Ohio State went on like a super
Ohio
miracle
State,
run.
Cinderella story.
I know
Ohio
that,
State.
but like they were the 4 seed coming into it, and like were or TCU was in that spot right before, and so it's like
a Cinderella program.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is the Cinderella stories that we'll see make runs will just be big brands that lost a couple regular season games and had a low seed.
Well, let me finish what I don't think it's gonna make it doesn't improve selecting who's going to play in the national championship. I think if we're just looking at like who's best to be in the national championship, let's use modern tech and some more data points to update the BCS and just make a really good BCS game. But I think it makes these bowl games more relevant. You get more buy-in because you get people to play these. So I say expand it, right? And I'm not one of those people who says get rid of the other bowl games, but if you expand to a 12, 14, whatever, you at least get that many more quality games. Because now we're at the point, with the 4 team where we're seeing like New Year's 6 bowls and people just don't care. Like teams are big brands, big teams in historically really big bowls are just zoned out going through the motions and they don't care. So at least if you dangle something, I feel like the expanded playoff is beautiful for that. Although I fully agree with Blake, you're just not going to see the Cinderella stories. It doesn't occur in football. It definitely doesn't occur in college football. Like you see them a little bit. We saw like the Lions made a run this year in the NFL playoffs, and the Ravens. I guess people are cheering for it at some point. And I don't think you'll see that. I think the best you'll see is sometimes you'll see like a freak win every like 5 years, but I think it makes a better bowl season. It's the best solution we have for the bowl problem right now.
Well, yeah, because the problem with the bowls is the problem the bowls have always had, but people have finally woken up to it, is that the bowls are useless. They're exhibition games that do not matter. It matters less than, OU's bowl game against, let's say whoever they play next year, and whatever bowl, whatever playoff game they play next year is going to be like, or not playoff game, whatever bowl game. Okay, that's dumb. That's dumb. No, because a playoff game would obviously be the most important game by far. But if they played in, let's say, the Alamo Bowl next year, they're not contractually able to, I believe. That game matters way less than their game against Maine, for example, because that game has impact on potentially winning a national championship, on getting into a college football playoff. College football, you can talk about the warm and fuzzies, beating your rival, all of that, all of the side quest. If you're a university that thrives on side quest, that only wants to win bowls and rivalry games, all that, then yeah, that's great for you. But if you're a proper college football program that wants to win national championships, that's your goal, to compete and to be at that high level, then yeah, like, this is a way better system because the bowls never mattered. If you really think, well, other than the time where there was no national championship game and they just kind of picked whoever was the best at the end of the year, which is really stupid. But regardless, what I'm saying is I love the system because we have more meaningful football at the end of the year than we've ever had. And I'm pumped about it because even though you look at teams like, like Missouri ranked number 9, they're not that good. The fact that they can still go on a field, go on the road, try to get a win, that's pretty awesome.
There's multiple levels to this. Like, why it's going to be more teams in the playoffs is always going to be number one, money. There's more meaningful football games. There'll be more room for advertisement, more viewers watching. Simple as that. You can just strike everything off, and we can talk about the next points. It's just kind of for fun. From a fan's perspective, from me, I think one of the biggest pitfalls of being a fan of college football, and I mean, it's great, but I hated, especially before the 4-team playoff, is you had a season where you had expectations of you had to be perfect to get to the postseason. And that is just unbelievably toxic as a fan. Now with this 12-team playoff, it is. It's toxic.
No, that's college football.
That's what
baby.
makes it fun.
Yeah,
it's a parlay. It should be a parlay.
But what's the point whenever your team loses twice and then your season's over? Is that fun? No, it's not.
No, it's nice to have a little bit more leeway. I think like having one mistake, you shouldn't damn you for the rest of the season, which has happened to many teams throughout this, college football playoff with 4 teams. Now, 2 losses, if you screw up twice, I think that's the line I cut off there. And I think
that's where a lot of these teams are going to be 2-loss teams. That's
yeah, but there's going to be some
playoff, but you cannot have more than 2 losses.
No, but what I'm trying to say is I think the 4 team was too little, because it's just, you don't want to have to feel like you have to be perfect every single season as a fan. This is from the fans' perspective, from my perspective, just because it is absolutely draining that you watch NFL, and you can screw up and learn from your mistakes in a loss and then go out and win the Super Bowl. It's like you can't lose at all and can't learn from that at all as a college football fan. It just sucks.
Well, Jamison, being perfect isn't even enough, too. Florida State went undefeated and left out of the playoff.
Yeah.
But, is Penn State, if you're they can learn from it. What have we seen over these last, Penn State's they are going to be the 12-team playoff merchant. They are always going to be there. They are always going to be 10-2, and they're always going to have a spot. We know who they are. We know in the deepest down bottom of my heart, it's not like they're going to correct it later in the season. They're just a mid-good team. They are a mid-good team.
I will say, Blake, you have to remember, Penn State has a bunch of other upper mid teams coming into that conference now, so they should be shaking in their little boots, with Oregon.
They're still
and everyone else. But I think they lose those games, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, we're the Tennessee now. We're Blue Tennessee, which is what they are. Except Penn State's 4 or 5 times the size of Tennessee.
I feel like that's an insult to Tennessee more than anything.
Wow, that's something. Blue Tennessee.
Well, that's it. They're like, oh, we sell out all of our games. Okay. You should. As a percentage of your alumni base going to games, Penn State is very small. They have 5 million alums. It's crazy. They're once again, I have to bring this up every chance I get. They're just old money UCF. They just started admitting anyone and everyone back in the 50s, and then they kind of just made people forget that they let anyone who applies in. And yeah.
I don't want to fuel the tangent about Penn State, but I think they actually definitely are going to make the playoff next year, looking at the schedule.
Yeah, they
have Ohio State. They have Ohio State.
That's Blake's point.
They have Ohio State at home and then just cake.
I told you they're gonna. They're going to be like Tarleton State coming to Happy Valley, as their marquee non-conference game. You're going to see, that's also, I feel like when the importance to get to, 10 wins now becomes the playoff, holy crap, the non-conference schedule is going to be packed with some cake. It's going to be a bakery come September, because nobody's going to play a legit program, because the conferences are getting so big, they're going to expand conference play. So, the good non-conference games, it's if I win 10 games in the Big Ten or the SEC and I can make the playoff, I am for sure not going to schedule that, neutral site game versus Florida State. Hell no. I'm going to schedule, San Jose State and just beat up on them, because, at the end of the day, it's not really going to, that's going to be probably makes a difference than a loss to Florida State.
You missed a great chance to do a San Diego City dig there, and you
won't dig on.
They won't go on the road though. They won't even do the bye game crap. They just try to play the good mid majors and injure all their players and get wins that way. They don't even try to step up in competition. At least the San Jose States, the other ones will travel cross country and try to go into somebody's house and beat them. San Diego City just doesn't. Yeah,
they played at Oregon State last year. Anyways, we're not going down this road.
It's killing me too this year. Their best player was at TCU. Their best player started at TCU and defected over to the enemy, and now is they're all right. They're mid. They're gonna make the tournament because of some random bias. I don't get. bracket. We need to just do a bracketology episode on like why bracketology doesn't make sense. Why is BYU so high in brackets when BYU has been utter ass in conference and has the same record as TCU, but we're the ones floating on the bubble. We're the ones like floating back and forth, but like and are actually competing in the conference, and they seem to be like lacking. The system makes no sense, but like we're gonna start getting that, Bobby. We're gonna get that in the college football playoff. There's gonna be a Joe Lunardi bracketologist coming out with his weekly column each week of BS propaganda that then the college football playoff committee uses as gospel at the end of the day to choose it.
Blake, I think you've really missed being in front of a mic here. Because I feel like you've been pent up. You've had some energy you've needed to get out there. But yeah, the Joe Lunardi is just going to be Heather Dinich. Let's be honest.
They are. It's going to be the same in college football. And guess who controls all the rights for it? That was not mentioned above, but ESPN. They own everything because monopolies are always good for the consumer. They're always great.
And that's the thing that you kind of have to think about is that has to pretty much be the only reason they're thinking of 14 is because they want to get more SEC and Big Ten teams in, which
I will say on the topic of conference, Blake, I know you're trying to do an anti, ESPN SEC thing here, but it should be noted, right, that these meetings that are occurring, this is kind of like the debate that people always have year after year with like the Electoral College. Who gets to attend? Who gets to attend these meetings where they decide how to expand the playoff or not? Is the 10 FBS commissioners, the college football playoff, obviously committee members themselves, and the athletic director of Notre Dame. Why does Notre Dame get independent representation as a school? Like Notre Dame gets the same number of votes towards this as the entire Big Ten does, which is ridiculous.
I'm glad you brought this up because I saw a whole bunch of boo-hoo Notre Dame on Twitter the other day that it's just like, poor Notre Dame, they can never get a top 4 seed. Poor Notre Dame, this, that. Notre Dame got a steal of a deal. They get constantly like boosted up in these rankings. Like I was going back like even was it last year? Like last year's Notre Dame team, like there's Notre Dame teams that are consistently within the 14 to 4 or like 5 range, and they get to host a home playoff game. So they're going to get a whole bunch of money from that. They're going to get a whole like eyeballs on them twice because they're going to get to play 2 games, and like they're not going to get exposed like immediately. Like they can easily be the 5 or 6 seed because of an overrank, come in and beat whatever lower seed, because it's hard to play at Notre Dame and win and then lose in the semifinals, and like that will be perceived as a win. It's like it makes me mad that everybody's just like boo-hoo Notre Dame. Join a conference, like join a conference or don't. You get to choose your schedule. They get to choose their entire schedule. Or I guess they do have that alliance with the ACC, but we're seeing the way of the ACC now. Like they're gonna have a home game against SMU, like for crying out loud. Conference
something that TCU just did recently, but I do need to point that out.
And OU.
Oh yes, but we're not throwing it out there as a like, oh, you're not a legitimate team because you're playing SMU.
We did it because the legitimate team Georgia canceled, or we had to cancel with Georgia, mutual canceling.
No, but it is I will once again say that OU should be independent. We would get as much sway.
No,
they don't have to pay for freeloaders. OU, our entire history in conference, we've had
a pretty big difference culturally. But
freeloaders like Tennessee and Missouri, who we've had to finance in 2 different conferences now. A&M are bums, but at least they are rich bums and they pay for their own seat. It's ridiculous. Arkansas, we've had to pay for them. It's crazy. Yeah. Kansas State, we should not have to subsidize K-State being a poverty program.
And that's why we left the conference. That's why we left the Big 12.
But now we just have more freeloaders.
We don't have more freeloaders because that's the thing is even though Arkansas, they're not good at football, they have an enormous amount of support. Basically everyone but Vanderbilt has, and maybe Kentucky has football support, and that's where it's different.
Yeah, that's why the Big Ten is an elite conference. They have good level of support. and they definitely show that on the on-field.
Well, they do. Yeah, they do. But the Big Ten is a big conference.
The reason why the Big Ten is a good college football conference is because they're in a bunch of big media markets. But Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Starkville, Mississippi aren't that, but they care. Jamison, it's been a while since we've kicked it to you on this.
Don't worry about me. I'm just listening. I'm enjoying the show right now.
Here's what I want to loop back to Notre Dame a little bit here, because I kind of think they have a great deal. I'm with you, Blake, because the home game thing it's going to be, I think if there's one thing I can 100% guarantee that will change is I don't see a single world where the second round games aren't also going to be home games, because the ability to host a bonus game that is high quality, you can call it a college football playoff game, pay a premium for it, that is going to be such a boost to everybody hosting that you're almost punished for being in the top 4, because you get the bye, which is fine. You don't have to play a football game. That's great. But the amount of money brought to the local economy, the gate, all of that not being seen because you're in the top 4, that just will not. I don't think there's any way that's not going to be changed by the next.
You think
run.
so?
I do.
You think so?
I mean, I get changed. I think we're always going to have always neutral site. They want as many neutral sites as possible.
Sure, but
the sponsor deals, man.
Yeah,
those sponsor deals are big. Yeah.
They could sponsor that. And here's the thing: the sponsors can go and sponsor the second round of the college football playoff if they wanted to.
But see, I think from a brand power, it's like the Goodyear Cotton Bowl has a better brand than Goodyear presents OU versus Purdue in like the first round of the playoff.
And they'll get those every other year.
Exactly. Everyone's gonna remember the sponsors of what the Fiesta Bowl was. People remember.
I mean, the Battletoad Fiesta Bowl. And here's my thing.
You just brought it up. That's the exact point.
That was a deep cut.
Yeah, because I'm a college football sicko.
But there's
I don't even know. I don't remember what Battletoad does.
That know Fiesta Bowl sponsors, and it's just
But I mean,
8 teams. At that point, they're going to have sponsors of those games. That's enough.
I do not think the sponsors are the biggest issue holding that back. I think the Bulls.
It's big money. It's big money.
It's solid, but it's not hold everything back money.
Sponsors. You guys are acting like we're not going to see the Timu Notre Dame.
Yes. Give me going.
Timu. Oh god. No, I mean,
I was vibing with that. I was like, get that on my Spotify Wrapped this year.
I mean, they'll get rotated in the court, the semis, just like they have been now. It's not like they won't exist. They'll still be bowl games. They just won't be college football, playoff bowls. And that's fine, I think. The thing is, if you do neutral site, I could see a world where the quarterfinals, I don't think it makes sense to ask fans to travel to, hypothetically, 3 different neutral sites in a month.
One neutral site conference championship.
No, that's different though.
But I'm saying
he's adding to your point, saying
that's technically 4. No, you're right. You're right.
The ticket fatigue is
you're right.
Yeah,
because
that's a really.
I've seen a lot. What's that, Jamison?
That's a really good point.
And I've seen the argument I've seen is well, March Madness does it. Yeah, but March Madness fills up a 20,000 seat arena with 4 different fan bases and locals. You have to fill up an 80,000 seat football stadium. I mean, how many we've seen college football playoff venues for these massive, Alabama or, these teams who make it a bunch of times, and they struggle to fill their allotment because they're I'll save up for this. Now, if you when we're talking semifinals, how many people are going to pay to travel that far for a quarterfinal?
I
just
agree.
I don't see it.
I think that you're right. But do I think that there'll be neutral site games first? I think that's my stance on it.
It's just, I feel like we're missing something here because just even look at the non-conference trends. we don't see many good home and homes anymore, but we see good neutral site games at the beginning of the season. Like, it just seems like every good game, I don't know the reason why, whether it be logistics or like it's just easier to host it in a big city. It just seems like it just like feels like we're getting more neutral sites.
How the hell are fans
going
to take how the fans going to take time off from work? I don't even know how that's even going to work.
Won't be a problem for Tennessee.
No, here's the
you're
thing,
slotting Tennessee into the playoff next year,
or LSU. No, I'm trying to build. We don't have any like rivalries anymore. We don't have any hate. I'm trying to build up hate for certain fan bases, hoping they find. I gotta find my new Iowa State.
It's not like we don't have
Tennessee's
Texas,
Mississippi State.
There's an obvious Missouri there.
I hate Texas.
Just
Missouri's irrelevant though. That's like hating. That's like me coming on the podcast
like an NPC
and hating on mosquitoes. Like they're there.
Missouri is the new NPC university. NPCU, I love it.
Tennessee is the NPC. You know, we've seen Missouri before. We've dealt with Missouri in the past. You know, like we have a history there. I'm fine with that. They're close by.
Well, Tennessee has natties though. Like they've been. I mean, 98. You know, let's not act like that's ancient history when ours is 2000.
Oh, Blake is you were lucky. Blake came back for that one. Blake, did you catch that?
Yeah.
What?
They have natties, baby.
I don't think they're like they're not an NPC. You know,
Tennessee
not
is
on
an
Iowa
absolute
State's
NPC
tier.
school.
Iowa State is NPC as hell. But no, an NPC is like Mississippi State.
Yeah.
You know?
No, because they're just bad. Like
they're just a generic.
Bad.
Oh,
no, South Carolina is. South Carolina is because I think Mississippi State understands what their bet is and like where they're going to get buried at the end of the year. South Carolina somehow has this weird like they expect something good to happen when it's never going to happen. Like it's never going to happen for them. Not a single time. Not once. Not once in my lifetime.
Even the Spurrier, Jadeveon Clowney like thing, that the best it resulted was like an outback bowl,
a fumble recovery.
With the fumble recovery, yeah, like that is peak South Carolina.
The little peak of their program in the past decade and a half is that they recovered a fumble.
they hit Denard Robinson really good
and
hang a banner. That's funny. No, but that's. I think there's a chance just because I think the top four will get really pissed off and be like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And
no,
they'll go from there. But
I'm on your side, Bobby, now. It's just no way you're going to get fans there for two games in a row. Like it needs to stay at home.
The real money is not in the ticket sales, though. It's in like the advertising and the TV. So
but it's gonna look bad.
Well, you have to create the atmosphere, but it shouldn't be like off-putting to sponsors where physically the game is located.
Do these bowls? I'm assuming they probably pay something to be able to host these games too.
Contracts work.
I am assuming like that's why these like bowl foundations and stuff. Like I'm assuming they pay money to have these games. I don't know if that's via the sponsors or what, but like.
Oh yeah, no, there are bowl payouts. You get college football playoff in general gives you payouts, but I mean I don't know. I personally think that that the bowl shouldn't be as involved as they are in, but we'll see if that changes in the future. I'm telling you, the first time, like Georgia looks at it and realizes we could have had everyone in Athens for this, they're going to be like out. And, just in general, from an atmosphere perspective, would you rather like an epic home game or like a crappy game at game? Yeah, nobody wants that.
We said in the title of this episode, how does this affect the Sooners? I don't think we've hit that. I don't feel like we've hit this yet. I think obviously the more the merrier, especially for a team that's getting hit with an over/under for 6.5 next season. Like fans, I understand me and Bobby did it. We went through the whole SEC schedule reveal, and what were we saying, Bobby? 9 wins? Is that what we were saying? Yeah, because we're a little homerish.
A lot's changed since then, though.
Yes, right. I know, but still, like, we needed this. We absolutely needed this. This affects us a lot. And, it's going to be a reality check next year, not maybe to the degree as much as some haters might say, but it's going to be a pretty big reality check next year. So I think people will finally start to realize and appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely a boost for OU. You can look at, where they ended up this year, 10-2, and you end up 12th. And be like, oh, well, that's not great. But I mean, this was an abnormally good year for college football. There were multiple, there was an undefeated team left out of the college football playoff. So, like an undefeated Power 5 team. That is wild. So there was a lot of really good teams. There were a lot of really good teams at the top. That was abnormal. I think there'll be years where you could see a 3-loss team sneaking in the back, that sort of thing. And when it comes down to strength of schedule, we know that they're going to be siding with the SEC on that one. Because look, if OU loses 3 games, if they do go 9-3, there's a damn good chance they find a way in if they get a couple big marquee SEC wins. That's just kind of the way it works.
I don't know, but looking back at the rankings, it's you don't really see many of those 3-loss teams that would be bumping on the door whenever you consider even I'm seeing 13-14 every single time for about the start of the 3-loss teams, 11 Utah.
Because because the committee did not care about ranking that point. Their rankings, they put 0 effort into who was going to be number 12 versus number 13, 14. You could tell that from week to week. How many times did we have we laughed and scoffed at the committee last year when they're obviously, they didn't take into account anything about this 20s range because this team played horrible last week, and then they went up 2 spots. They're going to take more into account, and that bubble at the spot is going to be a lot more biased like it is, the bubble was last year at the 4.
I just the only thing I worry about is what we've seen is they kind of take where you your amount of wins and then kind of rank you there from now. So it's even the 2-loss teams, you see a few stragglers behind the 3-loss teams, but I'm just where I don't know. It's still when especially with non-competitive non-conference games, I feel there's going to be a lot more 2-loss teams than 3-loss teams knocking on the door.
What we know from how college football rankings is right now, it's going to completely change. Our baseline knowledge of what the committee does, it's going to be completely different next year.
Yeah. And it'll be weird too, because we'll finally have bid stealers. Kansas State would have gotten the first round bye last year because they beat TCU. TCU wouldn't have gotten a top 4 seed. Utah would have gotten in with 3 losses into the top 4. I believe. So it's going to be pretty crazy to see how it shifts. And honestly, I'm all for that. I know some people are they're not deserving. They want a conference championship. It's going to make the conference championships so much more fun. And you're going to have some stakes to it. You're going to have a little bit of meat to it. You got to win those because you want to buy.
It will, I will say, I don't think for the SEC or Big Ten, it doesn't do anything for the conference championships. Big 12, it makes it interesting. ACC, it could make it interesting depending on the year. And then G5 ones, of course. But I just don't think you can't bid steal in the SEC when there's that many teams with that many good records. Same with the Big Ten. You can do that. The Big 12 is probably not gonna they're probably a one big bid league 9 times, if not 10 times out of a year. So it actually matters. And ACC can be the exact same way. It's unless it's Florida State, Clemson, both are fantastic. I don't think one of those, they're really getting an at-large bid. So I think for some of the smaller conferences like us, it makes a lot more, it makes it a lot more interesting because it's you're probably gonna get left out, but I just don't think for the SEC or Big Ten, this product really makes it eye-popping. It's oh, you have to see the SEC championship because it's not in the past when Kansas State's lost 3 games, they made the SEC championship. I don't think we're gonna really see that. I think there's always gonna be 2 dominant powers in the SEC.
I think to really emphasize Blake's point, right? We've seen years where with a 4-team system, the SEC championship is irrelevant to whether or not someone makes it. So I think, certainly when you move to, 12 and beyond, things like the SEC championship, probably also the Big Ten championship, are going to be, irrelevant. I would argue, it maybe even makes sense to do away with those games when you start to look at ticket fatigue and stuff like that. But
I think it'll be interesting for the buys, fighting for that. Because that is an advantage, even though it leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth that you'd have to then go to a neutral site, but it's definitely an advantage to just skip an entire game of football. I mean, just in terms of avoiding that fatigue, that's big. But but yeah, no, the answer is it's massive for OU. It's really good stuff. Blake, do you think this is good for TCU?
No, like I think it's kind of about, honestly, to be honest, it's about the same. It's like our best years, we probably like would have gone, like I guess last year when K-State beat us, but like it's not, I think the Big 12 is going to be so much of a dogfight now. We're all kind of like around the same caliber that I think, like, to be like pessimistic about it, which is sad, it's like Big 12 is a one big bid league, so it makes the conference championship everything in order to make the playoff.
I don't know. I think a two-loss conference champion loser could make it, but like I don't see them doing well.
I think the committee is going to be swayed a lot by this, like, Big Two kind of propaganda. It is. Like, I think, like, to say, just because, Penn State's, like, the best example. Just because Penn State has a lot of support doesn't mean they're, like, necessarily significantly better than a Big 12 team, because we won't really get to see that anymore. I don't think non-conference games are going to, like, they're going to be less, like, few and far between, just because of how big these conferences have gone. So I think it's going to be harder to compare teams conference by conference without those like few data points that we get maybe in September. And I think that it's like the 5v7 is like perfect if you're a Big Ten or SEC fan, because like that means the bias can be funneled into selecting the remaining of the field instead of just allowing it to be like soaked up by like conference, like the smaller conference champions. Like I just think it's at best, but like there's no chance like Big 12 is going to get like 3 teams in, but like SEC is going to get 3 teams in every single year. Probably Big 10, like it's probably going to be like with 7 and 5, 5 and 7, like it's probably going to be 3 and 1. Like that's gonna how it's gonna shake up. It's like at least 3 from the SEC, at least 3 from the Big Ten, and then the last at-large could go to maybe an ACC team, maybe a Big 12 team, but even then that could be, like, that's still a jump ball, I think, for those, like, Big 2 conferences.
Yeah.
But I think it always, even if it's just one, though, you're still leaving room open. You're still guaranteeing that a conference championship will get you in, and then leaving that, like, you'll never have the Baylor TCU situation from, was it 2014?
Yeah.
No,
I think it makes it
literally impossible.
Like I said, like our conference championship is going to be absolutely electric now, because I think it is really like it's gonna have that mid-major feel of like it's like if you don't win, you're probably gonna get left out. Especially if you have 1 loss, maybe 2 losses, like you're probably at the end of the day, like they're like, oh, you lost to this other like not so great team in your conference championship, like we're gonna bump you down big.
Well, even like a loss, like if you're undefeated and you take your 1 loss in the conference championship, there's a chance to get yeeted all the way down the list, and now you're having to play at Alabama or something. Or
like
you have to go to Madison, take on Wisconsin and your TCU.
Like a very powerful Big 12, I just see like the loser at best, and like it's a good loser gets like yeeted to the 12 spot automatically, and it's just like you start from there, buddy. Like we see the recent, and that's the thing I worry about too. It's like we see it all the time, the recency bias in these polls. It's not like a methodical approach. They're just kind of reacting to whatever happened that week. If you think that there's 2 great Big 12 teams and one just blows the other one out, like, you should, the rational person would be like, okay, that could be an outlier. This playoff committee doesn't do that. Like, they just launch Florida State out of there whenever they had, like, a bad game versus Louisville, even in a win. So,
and I do want to say one last thing about that, the 5th conference champion, which is going to be a group of 5 probably. The group of 5 has been pretty pilfered recently. You know, you got obviously the 4 American teams that jumped to the Big 12, SMU, who look to be the new American darling. They're off to the ACC, probably never to be seen again. Is this just going to be the Liberty Invitational every year? Because I don't know who is going to step up of those non-Power 5 teams, you know, in the pool. Like, is it going to be someone from the Sun Belt? Maybe the Mountain West? I mean, Blake, I promise you, this is not a lead up to be like, oh, UNLV, they're the prodigal son. You know, something big's happening in the desert.
It's like, I think the most competitive teams for that. So like Liberty's always going to be there because their conference sucks and they're going to win a lot of games. But like even undefeated Liberty wasn't a surefire thing versus a 2-loss American champ. I think we're going to see the Sun Belt become a little bit more involved. I think the quality of football like that entire conference is playing is just stronger. And I hope they like actually kind of watch some of these games and it's like, oh, even 2 losses in this conference from a G5 is significantly better than whatever Liberty is off doing. I think this is prime opportunity for Boise State. Like Boise State, I don't think like many of the Mountain West schools like are going to have those have the potential for those runs. Boise State does. Like they've shown it in the BCS era. They're always really good. They're always, I feel like, even in their bad, like Boise State this year was like disastrous at the beginning of the year, won the Mountain West championship.
Huh.
It's I don't want to talk about it, but
how'd they end up? Did they win their bowl?
But I feel like it's like Boise State's like prime, like they're licking their chops. It's like finally a way to get there because I feel like they're just always highly evaluated.
Yeah,
and they'll never get a Power 5. Like the university's kind of not good at all. You know, that's
which sucks.
And that's issue.
Like, we still now have like we are totally consolidating just by the amount of money universities are bringing in, kind of because like there's still like some stragglers like in these conferences, but like. It's not product on the field. It never was. Like if it really was like these expansion, like if it wasn't about media rights and how many eyeballs you could put on it, like Boise State would be in a power conference. Like if they didn't really, and like we use the thinly veiled academics excuse to like kind of be like, oh, that's the reason why. It's just an eyeballs thing. It's not like a talent thing. They're really good. Like they could easily be a P5 team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Y'all got anything else to say on this? I feel like
14 versus 16.
Yeah,
we didn't really touch on that.
Throw both of them out. I hate it. 12. I thought 12 was too much. I was a big 8 guy. I still kind of think 8 was the better number.
I like the buy aspect. I like rewarding people.
I get that, but I kind of thought that, you know, if you just did 8 and you get rewarded with the home game,
I wouldn't want 16. 14.
I want to go 14.
14 where you have the top 2 get a bye.
I wouldn't be mad about 14. 16 is too much and the no bye. I think that adding more teams to the playoffs, you have to reward somehow, some way to the teams that absolutely dominated during the year. So there needs to be a bye component to it. And I think 4 buys, I think is right in that sweet spot. So I don't want to go more to 14 and 16.
I kind of am a little bit more in agreement with you, Jamison. It's like if I had to choose 14, I don't agree with a 14. A 16, I might just launch myself off of a building at that point.
Makes no sense.
Looking at the rankings, the team that would have been the first team out was Iowa last year. Iowa. We knew that team was not good. And like,
Iowa versus it would have been Iowa versus Florida State with like that version of Florida State.
It's just that's the thing. Is like at some point, like I even think 12, like we can kind of tell who are the haves and who are the have-nots. 16, we are letting all the have-nots come through the door, and especially like if Jamison's theory holds correct, it's like if they do reevaluate these ratings and kind of tinker with them a little bit, like Iowa's probably making it. Like it's just like it has the brand factor, it has the watchability, the Big Ten. Like that's scary to me. Like that's scary. It's like that like teams that are just like they have a decent culture but like aren't good teams are like those games just become meaningless to me in my mind. That's like a meaningless game. I'm like Florida State, Iowa, just because you put the playoff title on it. I know for 1,000% what this Iowa team is. They suck. They beat up on those like bottom feeders of the Big Ten, but they really suck. And so I just don't want that.
I still
12, I can maybe warp my mind because I've warped my mind sometimes into those Penn State, the playoff merchants. But if it goes like in, I can maybe do that for the 12-team playoff. I cannot do it for 16. I cannot. Like I will not take. It will affect even my evaluation kind of going up to about 6 at that point because I'm like, these are just a whole bunch of bum teams, 2 rounds of bummy games that I have to get through in order to get to something I actually want.
Well, like in 2017, TCU would have gotten in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
it's like, that I knew what that team was. Yeah, like team. That's the thing. It's like I know what that team is. It's like it's cool. Like if you're a fan of that, it's like great. I guess you're playing in a playoff game, but just it's too many. It's too many teams, too many games. No, like at least try to make them somewhat special.
It would have been like TCU versus Georgia. Do we need to see Nick Chubb run all over TCU? No, we don't. Would it be cool? Would have been cool to see the Frogs go between the hedges though. But no, we don't need
I don't know because like there's no hope in that. Like that's like I'm kind of going there for the atmosphere, but I'm like I think if you're a real fan, you kind of can evaluate your team, even if you're on the more optimistic side. You've seen them for 12 games and being like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this does not feel like we could actually beat this team. Like, this just feels like we're actually we're just getting pulled up to slaughter. Like, basketball, at least you're like, we hit a whole bunch of threes. Maybe something goes our way. We could win the game. You can't do that in football. You can't be like, oh, we just hit every deep shot known to man somehow.
Turnovers.
Yeah, but even then, like you have to create the turnovers. That's the thing. It's not even
muffed punts, fumbles.
I don't want my like ability to rely on chaos to be on muffed punts and turnovers when it comes to these like 3 versus 16 games. Like,
all right,
no,
boys,
thank you.
We get 2 muffed punts. I think we can get this one.
Yeah, like Blake? What if the higher seeded team had to have Gavin Freeman receive all their punts?
Oh, that ensures my punts. That ensures. I've never seen.
That's too many.
Do y'all still have your special teams coach, or did he leave?
We never had one.
Well, we had one. The guy that was doing our special teams is now a assistant head coach
at Alabama. Yeah, he was the analyst.
No. I'm talking about Joe John Finley.
Oh, Joe John. Oh yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
I know that about football. You have to have a special teams coordinator. You think it's a meaningless job till it actually means something. You saw with Michigan, like he just put his son in that spot and like actually did horrendous at it and like almost cost them the semifinal game. Like it is an important part of the game because if you screw it up big time, it will affect the outcome. It will. That's why a lot of gamblers, they look at team special teams and like factor it into lines and like how they power rate teams is because it actually matters. Like typically good teams are good at special teams.
Yeah, but Jay Harbaugh is now an NFL coach. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Good speaking luck, of which,
buddy.
Yeah, Jamison, that I'm blanking so hard. What
Jesse Mentor?
No. Jolie Ali, who OU just got. Her last job was the Chargers. There you go.
Oh, really? I thought she was at Utah.
No, she was at Utah, but she spent 2023 with the LA Chargers. So there you go.
Amen. Now that's why you hire people right there.
Got a little Charger.
They do the best at all things not football.
Yeah.
Best uniforms, best social media.
They're celebrating PF Chang's week.
Yes, they are. I did see that on their social media too.
Which is great.
Shout out.
For sure. Ty, you're also basically completely out on the 16, right? Or are you?
No, I'm very in. I think I'm in on right. So first, like I've always said with the NIL and the transfer portal rules, we have to let it run long enough to get real data. Like the fact that we're going to run our current system or next year's system for 2 years and then change it, I think is still a little too soon. I think if you went to a 16-team thing, I think everything would adjust around it and it would ultimately come out better, right? You talk about like too many games, but I think if you run with a 16-team system for long enough, especially like the SEC, the Big Ten, where you're predicting that people are going in, I think you see those conferences cut down on maybe delete a game from their schedules and stuff like that to account for, presumably more games. So I think there's a lot of stuff you can do. Like you can't just keep making changes. Like we can't just keep adding ingredients or removing ingredients from the soup without tasting it, here and there. So I am for more games. I don't think if you want to talk about like what's the best way to select a national champion, I think you run a BCS like system. You have a updated computer program with what we know about football in 2024 or at whatever time. You factor in all sorts of things like players opting out and injuries and all sorts of things that weren't factored in too much into the BCS. And you pick the top 2 teams from the best, most deserving, whatever legal criteria you want to put on that. And I think you would get the same national champions most of the time that you get through the playoff system. I think it's about generating more games, more eyeballs, more clicks, more podcast talking points.
I think the BCS code would get hacked.
Yeah, well, and that's a
it's good. That's good. You deserve to win it. Then if you hack it, it's the same as like Nebraska giving people steroids. Like you can find a way to cheat and get away with it, you deserve it. That's Michigan football's motto.
Yep.
Yep. And I mean that's the thing, Ty, is it's like I see what you're saying, but also where's the fun in that?
Where's the fun in more games?
Or no, I was saying where's the fun in having the computer decide it? That's why more games are great.
Let it be chosen by online duck race.
Just argued it. 16.
Honestly, that's how I feel like some of these committee decisions are decided as online duck races.
I do feel like the committee should be selected via like a jury duty system, so that you get the chance that at like every couple years you just get a straight message board person on there who's representing like the most absurd. It's like all these esteemed people who've built careers.
We have one
message board people, and the message board people need to be the pool. It needs to be a pool of people from Twitter.
They actually watch games. They watch
turn
games.
Into the fan vote of the NBA All-Star Game.
They do watch it.
Pachulia gets into
it should be live streamed.
Peyton Hillis wins Madden cover.
Honestly,
it should be gladiator style. It should be done like in a room, like a conference, not like a conference room.
Trial by
combat,
I'm down.
Like a stadium. It should be done in a stadium, right? Like the committee's down there at the bottom of the bowl, and they're all mic'd up and they're discussing stuff, and the crowd can just be shouting at them. Like medieval. Like is he gonna like give the thumbs up or the thumbs down to the gladiator? I know that's not medieval, but and then the emperor's like going to give the thumbs up and the crowd starts like screaming and then they have to change, for fear of their own lives. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. I love it.
If you take home anything from this podcast, that's it.
More transparency, Ty. That's what you're saying.
That would create a lot of money, Ty. I'm with you.
Put them all in the pit. I want to see Boo Corrigan answer for his sins.
I do think you should be able to pay off, like legally above board. You should be able to pay off the committee members, because that would present like a really interesting like management dilemma. Because it's like, do we just bag out on NIL? Or do we just get a bunch of scrubs and then just buy our way into the playoffs, buy our bye week, and then just hope that we can upset through? I think there's some interesting like balancing, how much are we going to pay off versus how much are we going to bag out and get quality players?
Oh my God. That would actually probably just be college football at its purest form if you think about it. that actually might be the most college football way to decide it. So I think you have.
Yeah, it's never been the same since the bagmen have been able to come out of the shadows and form an LLC.
The bagmen will dry up here very soon.
No. Y'all hear Johnny Manziel talking about his bag situation?
Yeah.
Blake, you see that? Yeah, $3 million. Kevin Sumlin give $3 million to stay.
That seems cheap. Like that seems cheap.
I bet A&M isn't like they're dishing out more than $3 million nowadays. Like, I don't know. I try to be subtle. I think that's all we have for the show, though. But it was really good getting back and talking about something substantial. Always a fun time having you on, Blake.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's the end of our show. We will see y'all probably next week. I won't. I'm going to be in Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Well,
all
right, boys.
Yeah, buddy.
Or I might check in. I don't know. We'll see how we'll see how the Wi-Fi is out there. It'll be great. But anyways, if you like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast form and enjoyed this conversation, give us a little subscribe as well. Follow the show there. But anyways, that's all we got for today. And on behalf of Jamison, Ty, and Boatin Blake, I'm Bobby Howard. Thank you all so much for listening, all you ball knowers and ball not knowers out there. We'll see you next time. Boomer sooner, everybody.